Hello and welcome to another episode of Laying Down the Lore 40K, a lore podcast in which we aim to separate our Drukhari from our Dark Angels, our Tyranids from our Tau, and our Craft Worlds from our Chaos Marines, and generally ask, what's up with this Warhammer 40K stuff? My name is Ben Crone Barber, and I know pretty much fuck all about 40K. With me is my co-host Christopher Crallin Allen.
What, Ben?
Who knows absolutely fuck all about 40K.
Very true.
And my dear brother Darren.
Huh?
Who knows so much about 40k, it's a wonder he has time to do anything else. Over the years, this dichotomy between our levels of understanding became clear, and this series is an attempt to address that ignorance.
Ignorance.
Heresy. Oh, sorry, I thought we were saying a different song.
Morning, lads.
I think it's a hangover from the other series, but whenever I finish that intro, I always have to go deep on the, go real deep, an attempt to address that ignorance. I think it's to compensate. There must have been an episode where I was like, in an attempt to address that ignorance.
Hey, let me tell you, nut clamps aren't for everyone.
Do you ever do that thing where like somebody says something that shocks you and you say it back to them in a high voice? You're like, really that thing? And then you go, oh no, sorry, I mean really that thing.
I'm sorry, Archbishop, you want me to touch you where?
Oh dear.
Oh, happy 40k recording day, everybody.
Hooray!
Rumble. Go.
Go! Go!
Go.
No,
I was just going to
wrong
say,
one.
I'm really excited about this episode because I don't know. Like, I knew a little bit about the last episode because of the novels that I badly read, but I have no idea how. I kind of know how the story ends, but none of the details in the run up. So,
Are you one of those people that like read the when you get a book, you read the opening pages, the end pages, and you're like, right, I don't need to read the rest of it now.
I just read the blurbs. I don't even open the book, Chris, because I don't want to crease the spine, you know?
Yeah, got it.
I want them to look all pretty on the shelf.
Weird.
He's the same in dating.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No touching. No touching.
No touching. If you crease my spine.
Open me gently, please. Oh, God.
Oh, wow.
I don't know where I was going with that. I'm just going to go for a quick shower. I'll be back in a minute.
Oh, Ben's just taking us back to his days at boarding school.
I'm sorry, you want me to use what as a bookmark?
I mean, you want me to use what as a bookmark? I mean,
Well, using that as a segue, why are you excited about this episode, Ben? What was so good about last episode? Why don't you recap it for us, Ben? How about that?
Yeah. Get
Right.
your cock out of that book and recap it for us.
Okay, hold on. Let me close the book. I did that in the wrong order. So, give me a start point, Darren.
You've just been born.
Okay, so it's just been born, and then 39 years
The
later.
Great Crusade is coming to an end.
Yes, and Horus is trying to bring a planet. Horus and his sons of Horus are trying to bring a planet into compliance, and he is injured by an assassin who was, I think it was a Chaos, or hired the assassin, or Chaos got the assassin to injure him, and then it was with a sword, and it was really poisonous or something, and it basically fucked him up. And they brought him back to the ship, but the tech priests, no, what kind of priests? Like some sort of medical person couldn't do anything for him. They're like, we need
Healing people, shaman.
one of them.
Space shaman. Yeah.
Spaceman. That doesn't work. Space shaman. Spaceman. So they just got a random spaceman to come and do some work on him. Anyway, basically, he's fucked. And I went back down to the planet to get the sword, and the guys down there were like, we can fix him, bring him down here. And they brought him down, and then they did some sort of ritual in which Chaos got into his noggin and was like, basically, the Emperor, not a good guy, man. He doesn't love you. He never did. And he's abandoned you, and you should rebel. And then some other stuff.
And then, the Hanging Gardens of Babylon.
This episode. So then some other stuff happened. Horus had to he figured out, through the lodges, through the kind of secret lodges.
Warrior
which
lodges,
are
I think they were, weren't they?
Warrior lodges. They're like cults.
Well, you need a membership card.
Yeah, like a little badge, a little medallion. And if anyone asks you if you're in the lodge, you have to say something about badgers. I can't remember what it was.
Yeah.
And then
That's a nice badger you're wearing today. Yeah.
And he's like, no, your badger's nicer.
No, I love you more.
And then, basically Horus then figured out who was kind of into him, with him.
Are you?
What are you doing? Oh, gross. I don't know. No, I don't want that.
Keep going. You're doing very well.
So he figures out what's wrong with him. Sorry, what's wrong with him? What the fuck is wrong with me? He figures out who's with him. And
he's differently abled, Ben. There's nothing wrong with him.
And then they go to make a planet called Istavan, which had been brought into compliance but had rebelled. They went back there to bring it back into compliance. And so what he did was he sent down everyone that was still loyal to the Emperor, and then he kept all of his guys, all his chums on the plane. And then when they were all down there, he virus bombed their ass, wiped out I think it was some reasonable number, 97,000 billion people on the planet. And
do you mean million?
No, I mean billion. And it didn't kill all of the Space Marines, so then they had to go down and fight them, and they were kind of engaged there for a long time. And at some point, the message got back to the Emperor, and he then sent all of the loyal legions to Istavan. That was on Istavan 3, and then the bad guys set up camp at Istavan 5, and then the good legions turned up, and they weren't all good legions, were they? There was only was it 3 or 4 good legions in the 7 that arrived?
You tell me.
Let's go with 4 of 7, and the other 3, they came in 2 waves, which we've all been there. And the second wave was the bad guys, and they fucking annihilated most of the good guys. And then there was the betrayal at Calth, where the word bearers got revenge on the Ultramarines by basically fucking up is it their home planet? No, Calth isn't their home planet. Is it?
No, didn't what happen? They the Ultramarines or something, they got stranded out near the Eye of Terror or something. There were a load of warp
storms. Did you just
storms.
say the Yorkshire Marines?
The York. Hey
up, Chuck! Hecky thump! Look at these bloody warp storms!
Look, it's an orc.
We're never going to get through that. No, it's batty. That is that weather's reek bad. That is. Oh no! Get kettle on. Got out moist with chips.
After the word bearers fucked the Ultramarines up, warp storms engulfed that whole area, and the 500 worlds of Ultramar?
Yorkshire.
Of Yorkshire. The 500 worlds of Yorkshire were basically stranded. They couldn't escape for the rest of the heresy. And
what was the name of the storm? I
don't know. What was the name of the storm?
Do they name them like we do, like after our storms, like Storm Ethel?
Yeah, Susan.
Yeah.
Bertrice?
Storm Dave.
Storm Benny. What was the name of the storm?
The Ruin Storm.
Oh, okay. Like a rune fang.
Interesting.
No, like rack and ruin.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that makes a lot more sense. Okay, ask us some questions.
What podcast do you think you were listening to?
Ooh, I've got one for you, Ben. I've got a question for you. Okay. Cool. Here we go. Which loyalist Primarch sent a psychic warning to the Emperor compromising the safety of Terra?
That was actually my favorite part of the story, and I completely missed that out. It was Magnus the Red.
Yes!
Magnus the Pious. No, Magnus the Red. Wrong podcast.
That's right. Sent a psychic spear of info of warning to the Emperor, didn't he? And then the psychic barriers, protective barriers around the Golden Throne were compromised, and chaos started pouring in. Is that right?
I think that was yes, Chris, that was right.
I think Darren, he's like a scientist. He's just like put us two in a metaphorical jar, shaking it and just observing.
We're just in a petri dish.
If wishes made it so.
Can I have a question about that? Because what the psychic spear that he sent, did he appear to the Emperor? Did he psychically project himself to the Emperor?
Yes.
It wasn't just like an information. He didn't just send an email.
He didn't get like a psychic text. He sent a gif of himself going, ooh. Ooh, it's terrible.
Amazing.
That moment when, and chaos coming from behind him. Ooh.
When he presented himself, when
it wasn't that kind of spear, Ben.
When he exposed himself to the Emperor, did the Emperor speak to him via that psychic projection? Like when he arrived?
Was there a two-way conversation?
Yeah.
Do you know what? My memory fails me at the minute. I think it was just a one-way broadcast because it required so much energy to punch through all the defenses.
Mm.
But this is a genuine moment where I go, I can't recall. I think there might have been a bit of bants, but
there might have been a bit of what? A bit of bants.
A bit of bants.
Yeah. Hey, Magnus! Hey, Amps! How you doing, bro? Yeah, not so bad over here. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Oh, side note, you just destroyed the whole planet. Well done.
Yeah.
You might want to lock the back door tonight, Emperor. It's going to get a little bit hairy.
It's going to get real funky up here.
I have another question for you, Ben, about the lust. After Magnus breaks the golden rule of using his psychic abilities to warn the Emperor sends a squad of people to go and bring Magnus to heel.
That's right.
Led by Lehman Russ. I don't know if he's a Primarch or just some badass. Lehman and Magnus fight. Le Mans. Le Mans?
Le Man. I am Le Man. The man.
And in the same way as Ferrus Manus is it Latin for Iron Hand? We all know that Lehman Russ is Latin for wolf.
Is it?
No.
It's okay. Well done. Bravo.
I enjoyed that. Right, go on.
Cool. What happened during the fight, or at the end of the fight, I should say, between Le Mans and Magnus?
Oh, he WWF'd him, didn't he? He broke his back. Click, clack.
Well, he didn't quite, though. I don't think he managed to actually accomplish that, did he? What did Magnus do to get out of that pickle?
I swear he broke his back, but then he caught...
Did he actually manage to do that? Did he actually manage to break his back down?
He did, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he broke his back.
Okay.
He click-clacked him, but not in a kind of like good chiropractor way. You know, it wasn't like he was like, oh, mate, I've got a bit of a, can you... And yeah, he just picked him up and fucking snapped him.
I believe that's referred to as cracking rather than breaking. Could you break me in a good way? He said to someone sexually. I mean, if your back's going to get fucked, it's pretty much better to get it done by Le Man.
Which also means wolf. He called out psychically and... Zeech, the
psychic yodel. Yodel.
Yodel. Ow.
Oh, my back. Oh, my lumbar. So, yeah, he called out psychically, and Zeech, who is the god of change and, like, magic and sorcery and
Psyker.
He's a fucking psyker, mate. He reached out and he was like, here, Magnus, mate. You want to get out of the elite pit? So he gave him a telephone.
I'm sorry. Do you think this happened on Catachan? What's going on?
So they moved to Catachan so that they could do the rest of this in a funny accent. And then he basically portaled him and the remaining 1,000 sons out to a world.
Portaled him.
Portal me. And then they all got moved to a planet which became known as the planet of sorcery or sorcerer's planet or
No, planet chiropractor.
Cracking planet that. Cracking planet.
No pun intended.
How did I do, Chris?
Mate.
Broad strokes, very, very well. I think that was quite good.
Yeah.
The only thing I'd pick you up on is, in fact, it was 3 loyalist legions at Ispan 5 bent, not 4.
Yeah.
Did good, could do better.
I think that's what I meant to say, but I've obviously said the wrong
Oh,
thing,
how
so.
convenient is that? No, love, I was just joking. She was here to fix the plumbing. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, whatever. When I said 3, what I meant was 4.
yeah. Oh, sorry. Did you think that this was your main Christmas present? No, that's coming tomorrow. Yeah.
So, Horus Heresy Part 2.
Yeah, where do we pick up from? Oh, is this another recap episode? Are we done?
This is actually, we're doing the 40K interpretation of the fantasy podcast. We're just rewording everything, but including the words Bolter and Imperium of Man.
Space. Yeah.
Space,
Yeah.
Space lizards. Yes, so we are going to look at the second half, really, of the Horus Heresy, although not really at the same time. So this is the kind of clarity that you can come to expect from us moving forward. There is such a body of work around the Horus Heresy that really we can't cover everything, and nor would I care to, if I'm being completely honest. But what we will do is we'll touch on some of the major battles moving towards the kind of, dare I say, climax of the whole story. So as the lads have suggested there, we've moved through the kind of opening to middle battles, the major kind of conflicts of the Horus Heresy. So the initial betrayal, then the drop site massacre at Isfahan 5, then the war at Calth, which hobbled the forces of the Ultramarines and opened up a ruin storm, which captured 4 or 5 loyalist legions within its boundaries. It made warp travel next to impossible in and out of the kind of 500 worlds of Ultramar.
The Ruin Storm, was that brought on by Chaos of their own volition, or was that something that they did, Horus and his forces liaise with them, and on that, did they ask for it to happen? Or, yeah, how did it come about?
Really, the whole kind of betrayal at Calth was a ritual, and I'm vastly summarizing the entire thing here. So it was a ritual that there was such a bloodletting that it allowed chaos just to pour through, and this rune storm manifests around. So it is done in coordination with the forces of chaos. The thing to remember is Horus is their puppet, is the puppet of chaos. So he's being guided and controlled by them through dreams and visions and what have you. And I suppose Inception, now that the movie Inception exists, he was incepted to go this way. The thing to keep in mind is that the real power behind the throne at the opening stages and quite into the middle stage of the Horus Heresy was Lorgar. You know, it was so Borg.
Right.
Right.
Because he was such a powerful psyker, is that right?
Because after the chastisement, he went off in search of something that would value his worship.
Right, okay.
And really, even Lorgar was to some extent manipulated by the kind of high chaplain of the word bearers, who was a real villain in the whole story, was Erebus, who procured the knife, the blade, that ultimately killed or was used to stab the War Master Horus, and triggered that whole event where he could then become possessed and start the Horus Heresy. So, to your original question then, the Ruin Storm was a direct effect of the betrayal at Calth.
So is Lorgar, in terms of kind of communicating with the Chaos Gods or the forces of Chaos, is it more Lorgar that does that directly, whereas Horus and the other traitor Primarchs are kind of more puppeted, they're more manipulated? Because Inception it's putting an idea in someone's head in a dream state that they believe is their own idea, so they don't think they're working for Chaos.
I think Horus is the real motivational force behind the Civil War, the Imperial Civil War. Lorgar is definitely involved in manipulating circumstances so that Chaos gains more influence. But Chaos has chosen Horus as the kind of point man.
Right, okay.
How does Lorgar feel about that? It's like he's been used and rinsed, but Horus is the main event.
Horus is the main event. It's a good question. I think he's getting what he wants out of it. He wants to not only venerate something, but to some extent be venerated and, being seen as right. When you're one of 20 super soldiers, being the correct one is always a benefit. But he has his own machinations. He's, we'll get to that shortly, but a lot of the traitor Primarchs, in fact, most of them, are still alive in, 10,000 years later. Alive in quotes. They are still, working out their plans and machinations and other words that mean the same thing to be able to reconquer the galaxy. So to some extent, the Horus heresy is still going.
Right. Okay.
If you see what I mean.
The effects of it.
Yes, it's called something else. It's the Long War, they call it. Abaddon.
No longer Horus's heresy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The blasphemy of Horus or something. I couldn't think of anything better on the spot. I apologize. I should self-flagellate now.
It's okay. Well, you can think of something later and we'll record it and just paste it. And then some canned laughter, maybe. Chris, give us some canned laughter. Perfect. Edit done.
Seamless. Yeah, exactly.
The thing that worries me is that's actually going to be used again and again. And again and again.
That's going to be a classic laugh. Like the Wilhelm scream they use on all sound effects. That's going to be a timeless canned bit of laughter right there. That is.
Did you just immortalize yourself?
Yes, I did.
Well, don't do that. Pull up your pants. We're recording a fucking podcast.
Yeah.
Hey, you're venerating yourself publicly here, Darren. I mean, Jesus.
Wildly inappropriate. Wildly inappropriate and massively distracting.
Yeah.
Right. Eye-wateringly distracting, eh? I know.
Eye-wateringly distracting, yeah. So what we'll do is we'll just hop around a few of the larger battles just to give you a sense of this galactic spanning war, and then we'll have a look at what happens towards the end with hilarious consequences. Isn't that the thing they say in reviews? You won't believe what he does next. I thought we'd touch on a couple of the key moments, as I've said. So the first one we'll look at is the Battle of Molech. Or Molech, depending on how well your dentures fit.
Molech.
What Chaos reveals is that there's a number of warp gates, webway gates, or just gates to the old kind of planets within the Eye of Terror. You'll recall, dear listener, that the Eye of Terror, singular, that the Eye of Terror is... I don't know why I found that so funny.
Because it's true.
So the Eye of Terror is where the Eldar homeworlds used to be. So there's a lot of webway portals that lead to that. One of these is on the planet of Molech. So at the Battle of Molech, They had an oyster off. There was it was a what's referred to as a knight's world. So these are if you recall, the walking tanks, the walking war machines, the mecha / Gundam for our weeby friends that originally started out as agricultural equipment and then were weaponized and then turned into a kind of pseudo-Arthurian style culture around their use. And the kind of preeminent house on the planet of Molech was the House of Divine, the Divine House, which had been kind of riddled with, how would you describe it? Excess is probably a good word, but so much inbreeding that it make not only their eyes, but your eyes water. A real kind of, whoa.
Webbed hands, eyes that are too close together.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. Yeah.
The technical term, droop ear. Electric elbow, the worst kind of conditions. Horus gains visions of the Emperor traveling around the universe. Now, if you recall, there was a period of time where the Emperor, just kind of after the Unification War, darted around the place trying to get a handle on webway, gates, but also other lost technologies that could be used to benefit the reunification of mankind, not just Terra. Horus realizes that one of these gates is on the planet Molech, so he organizes an invasion. They are a loyalist planet, it should be said, with lots of knight houses, a significant armed presence from the Imperium, but also a really well-regarded and well-trained planetary defense force. So this is not a walkover by any means. It's a mass invasion comprising of traitor knightly houses, traitor forces, some elements of space marines, and they just head straight for where they believe the Webway Gate is, which is just next to the capital city. The defenders are putting up an amazing fight. It's not just that it's kind of a balanced on a knife edge. It's clear that the defenders are just dug in and they're going to last for a significant amount of time to not only deny the traitors whatever it is they are seeking, but also hold up a sizable army that Horus could use elsewhere. This is where the kind of whispered machinations of chaos come in. And in the middle of the battle, I say middle of the battle makes it sound like it was a jolly afternoon and then suddenly something happened. But this was
just after lunch.
Yeah.
After battle recess.
About 3 minutes into the complete battle, almost the entirety of House Divine is turned to chaos, specifically to the kind of rampant excess of Slaanesh, where they become effectively demon knights. They will eventually become these kind of possessed machines. But this tips that, a large, well-regarded knightly house turns traitor halfway through the battle, so they just start destroying their own lines and opening up access for Horus's forces to come in. And of course,
is that quite a rapid process then in terms of being possessed by Slaanesh? It sounds like it was kind of dumph, and now I'm a demon.
In the novel, it's one specific lord is turned within the House of Divine, but he's the head honcho,
right?
In terms of the battle, so he's able to just really control. There's apparatus within certain types of knight vehicle that allows you to, it's really Inception. It allows you to override the will of the pilots of the other knights, so that the knights end up enacting your will. So there was a mix of that. There was a mix of kind of the standard aristocratic corruption that you see in a lot of novels as well. But once the leadership turns either loyalist or traitor, in general, the rest of the house will follow.
Right, okay.
Because
Okay.
it's such a feudal structure.
It wasn't like they all just, simultaneously grew 3 pairs of tits and lobster claws, and then that was it. Off they went. It was one guy.
I mean, that's incredibly specific, Ben. Are you all right, mate?
Listen, we've all seen pictures of demonettes. We all know how hot they are. Okay, let's move on.
We've all stared at pictures of demonettes for hours. Don't act like you haven't.
Wondering, would I? Could I look past the claws? Maybe. How big a rubber band would I need to get to make those claws safe?
I'm glad you went that way, because I thought you were going to, how big a rubber band do I need to sustain this erection for days? I don't know why my mind went there. No, you shut up.
It's when the leader of the House of Divine just kind of came around the corner in like slinky bikini and a thong and high heels. Like,
yeah.
You look different today. Yeah, exactly.
Were you out last night?
No, I always wear this.
Eventually, Horus takes the planet, quite roughly from the side, and gains access to the warp kind of portal beneath its crust, and then he uses that to gain more kind of radically powerful psychic abilities. I use this story to illustrate a couple of things. One is that the Imperial Man already was corrupt. There were corrupt elements within a lot of its worlds based on power and decadence and authority. Lack of, if you have no accountability, you can pretty much do what you want. The second thing is to show that there are things that predate humanity's kind of expansion into the stars, and that Chaos was well aware of them and was using not just Horus, but all of the other Primarchs to go and pick at these kind of things to increase their personal power and influence, and thus be a larger corrupting force within their legions to kind of draw them more fully into the service of Chaos rather than the service of Horus. So the Battle of Molech is a good example of that. The next one I thought we'd look at, just in terms of devastation. A good example of that is the Battle of Tallarn. Now, Tallarn was this kind of verdant, not garden world, but it was definitely a civilized world with kind of lush, fulsome, how do you describe it?
Buxom.
Vegetation. Yeah.
Voluptuous.
Real curvy kind of gardens.
Massive gourds.
So this gourd world.
It's a bit gaudy here.
Check out the size of those gourds. You're spending more time with those gourds than me.
Why are there holes in quite so many gourds?
You've got pits all around your... Oh, these? No, I don't know how they got there. Oh, Jesus, yeah.
Let me just brush the seeds from my beard. Yeah.
Oh, dear.
Tallarn, apparently a very well fertilized planet.
It is now.
So this is another example of a hidden artifact of power somewhere within the planet. And this time it's invaded by Perturabo. Peter. It's invaded by Peter, the Primarch of the Iron Warriors. Perturabo.
You're Darren? Come back to us, Darren. Come back to us. Perturabo.
Peter Tuba? No.
Peter. P-Money. P-Dog.
pee money. As our father would say, if I could pee money. He had a vision of something called the Black Occulous. So he does the kind of standard Iron Warrior fare in terms of warfare, which is he's a siege master. He's the kind of mirror image, or the dark reflection, I suppose you should say, of Rogel Dorn, who is the kind of siege master of the Loyalist faction. He's the one that is, as the Battle of Tallarn is happening, is fortifying the entire planet of Terra.
Wow.
Perturber attacks the surface of the planet and is able to capture...
Just attacks the surface of the planet, just goes to the ground. It's like, take that planet.
And while he's doing that, the Loyalist legions attack him.
Yeah.
So, all right, Peter.
Why couldn't I have had an easier name to pronounce? I blame the Earth.
His entire legion has weed whackers, and they're just marching through the verdant, fulsome countryside.
Oi, oi, Ferris, look who's back. Well, if it ain't the Lion himself, I ain't seen you for ages. Where you been at, mate? Just back from Doolan. Had to have a word with our brother, the Wolf. What? Leaving? Russ? You've been barking up the wrong tree again? Something like that. Anyway, had to put his ass to sleep. Whatever. That boy's bark always been worse than his bite. It's good to see you, LJ. Yes, mate. It's good to be back. Hey, guess you heard about our boy Horus. Horus? Why? He's still with that mental chick? Nah, she had enough of him a while back now. Anyway, he ain't got time for women no more. He's woke. Woke? What the fuck is woke? You been spending too much time with Dad again? Nah, mate. He hates Dad now. Says he doesn't identify as Primarch no more, and he reckons he'd do a better job running the whole thing himself. Run the whole Imperium himself? Are you having a laugh? What you mean Horus don't identify as Primarch? He fancy them Tau now or something? Nah, mate, it's serious. Horus just started acting all crazy one day, mumbling to himself and being offended about things. Like, why there has to be separate Primarch and Inquisitor restrooms, and what's us to have Imperium privilege holidays, and reflect on how good we have it compared to those not in the Imperium or some bollocks. And he keeps signing off comms shouting, "Non-Terran lives matter." You what? Yeah, mate. Oh shit, here he comes now. Alright, Horus. Look, it's LJ the Lion. He's back from Doolan. Alright, Horus. How you doing, bro?
Oh, hi, Lionel. Good trip.
Yeah, thanks, mate. What's new with you?
Just the usual, you know. Carrying out our Emperor's will, instilling fear and despair into those less fortunate than us in order to conform to his authoritative, totalitarian rule, and so they can serve him in helping expand his ever-growing, self-indulgent influence across the galaxy.
Yeah, dude. Dad always liked the way you slapped those little twats in their place with your claw thingy.
It's nice to see you and all, but can you please not call me dude? And those little twats have rights too, you know.
Yeah, the right to fall in line and serve the Imperium, am I right? Am I right? Hey, too right, mate, too right.
Whatever, you guys. One day, you're gonna wake up to the fact that Daddy ain't who he really is. That Daddy doesn't love you at all.
Oh, come on, what's your problem with Daddy Imps, eh? You still bitter he's left us to keep taking over the galaxy while he's sitting on his fucking massive golden chair? Come on, mate, we're big boys now.
For God's sake, I'm so sick of you and the others being so high and mighty about the Imperium and conquering worlds. You know how many lives were lost in the name of Dad in just the past hour?
Real lives, Lionel. People with families, children, the whole future ahead of them. Non-Terran lives matter, damn it.
Yeah, I've heard the slogan, Horus. Since when did you start giving a shit about non-Terran lives? Remember when the Emperor named you War Master? What the fuck is wrong with you?
Wow, you just don't get it, do you? Neither of you do. When will you see that the galaxy would be a better place if we just stopped crusading and instead work together with other worlds and Xenos, sharing ideas and beliefs, exploring and enriching the galaxy together, as one?
You be blazing some of that obscura shit. Listen, I just came back from half a quadrant away, got jumped by a bunch of Tyranids and lost me crew. They nearly had me very being ripped out of me in the war, but this is the craziest shit I've ever heard. You need to check yourself, mate.
Ugh, you are so narrow-minded. I don't have time for this. I'm going to hang with Angron. We have a non-Terran Lives Matter march we need to organise.
Yeah, sure, whatever, mate. You go get together with your little club.
See what I'm talking about? That boy's gone crazy.
Yeah, you're not wrong there, mate. You better calm down or he's going to end up committing heresy next.
Can you imagine?
Perturabo mirrors the tactics used by Horus at Isfahan 3. So he initially just virus bombs the planet.
Wow.
The kind of loyalist defenders had caught on to this trick, mostly informed by the handful of survivors from Isfahan 3. And so they had hidden these vast tank regiments under the surface in armored bunkers, so that when the Iron Warriors, led by their unnameable Primarch, landed, there began the largest tank battle in the history of the Imperium, and one that was not rivaled until the early 41st millennium. So it took 10,000 years for a tank battle of this scale to happen again.
And how big was this tank battle then?
At least 7.
Oh, bloody hell, several. Jesus. Yeah.
In the mid tens of thousands on each side, at least.
Blimey.
Plus conventional forces, plus knightly houses, plus some Titan legions, the huge walking robots, plus orbital bombardments. This was total war. The kind of concept by von Clausewitz. It was just, it was a planetary siege, and the Iron Warriors were determined to get to where they needed to be. This was all happening while the entire planet was on fire. Because you remember that...
Hard mode,
yeah.
You got to fight for your life, and you're on fire. Go!
Yeah. Perturabo was going for his platinum for the Tallarn battle.
Yeah.
Nightmare mode. Yeah.
He hadn't counted on quite so many armoured vehicles being there, and it became a protracted engagement. But eventually, the Iron Warriors were able to get in and capture Sapphire City, which is the kind of
Sounds nice.
the capital, and use this as like a spaceport, the landing ground, the primary landing ground for all the forces, all the traitor forces that were still in orbit. Now, they were only able to do that because the Alpha Legion was also there with its kind of hidden spy agents. If you can imagine, I think we may have mentioned it before, but the Alpha Legion specializes in stealth operations.
Saboteur and subdiffusion.
Yeah. It's effectively an entire legion of superhuman James Bond types.
Amazing.
In terms of skills, not so much in romance. That would just be weird.
smarmy.
And let's be honest, their abilities in infiltration are really limited, in disguise, are really limited to that of other Space Marine legions, aren't they? They can't just go to the oil baron's ball, and kind of blend in like
with some googly eyes. And a fake mustache.
Yeah.
Have you seen the president of Zimbabwe is here? He's about 4 foot taller than everyone else, and he's clad in power armor. It's very strange. Very strange. So.
Yeah, he keeps introducing himself as Alfarius. What's going on there? But as it turns out, they can unfortunately do that because there's a drug called polymorphine, which allows you to change the shape and size of your body by moving molecules closer and further apart.
That's cool.
Within your system. It's used by the Khalidus assassins, both in 30k and then forward on into 40k. But, I mean, you're not wrong. Every Space Marine Legion has alpha legionnaires in it in disguise. They also do a thing where they go through kind of really strong bouts of hypnotherapy on captured Space Marines, who will then use a trigger word, much like our
Shufflehufferhefferweisen.
Whatever it is, Snuffleupagus, Big Bird's friend, to trigger a certain set of actions for that person who has no idea either that they were captured or were conditioned, or in fact, even as they're carrying out the programmed actions, they've no idea what's happening.
Wow.
So as the Iron Warriors really kind of flooded the planet with their forces, they expected a hugely easy victory. But the protracted war turned into an even more protracted war and ended up costing a huge number of casualties on both sides, specifically in the terms of armored equipment, so tanks and personnel carriers and artillery pieces, that kind of idea. Through all of this, with the kind of double-sided treachery of the Alpha Legion, the Iron Warriors' search for the Black Occulous was exposed, and ultimately they were beaten back and forced to withdraw from the planet.
So the defending legion, was there a legion on the planet?
It was primarily standard human troops. There would be some advisors in there and maybe some small elements, but it was largely just regular human troops.
And were they aware that they were defending the Black Occulous?
No, it wasn't until the Alpha Legionnaires, the agents of the Alpha Legion, sort of tipped off the Imperial forces as to what was happening. I had started to say that the Alpha Legion were a really interesting legion within the Horus Heresy because they were presented the kind of visions of the future by the Eldar.
Right.
By an Eldar, who effectively gave them the choice to be loyalist or be traitor. And being traitor had a better end for humanity. So they chose to become traitors. So they're acting as traitors, but there's a significant amount of loyalty still to not perhaps the Emperor, but to humanity.
Right.
So I was going to say, at that point, being a traitor and a loyalist is relative, isn't it? Like,
yes,
spinning it like that, the Emperor is the bad guy. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think they're used narratively to highlight the false choice between the Emperor and Horus. It's does anything really change for the day-to-day citizen in the Imperium if one is in charge rather than the other?
So there's a sort of nobility to the Alpha Legion's intentions.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
And Horus probably feels the same. All the rebels probably feel the same. They probably feel righteous. What they're doing is right. And that actually the Emperor and the Emperor's loyalists are the villains. Both of them, but both sides of the fence probably think they are the righteous, honourable ones. Yeah.
So the Eldar that spoke to the Alpha Legion, to
Alfarius, the very pronounceable Primarch of the Alpha Legion.
Yeah, was there more than just an Eldar that spoke with him?
Yes, there's a group called the Cabal, which is kind of...
That's right.
Yeah, that's a bit beyond the kind of introduction, but there was a collection of Xenos intelligences that were trying to shift the fate of humanity in certain directions.
Right, okay. And how sure can we be of their visions for the future? Did they have prescience? Like, were they able to see the future?
Yes, they were. They were able to see versions of futures. No, there's no one really in Warhammer 40K that can see precisely the future.
Right. Okay. Right.
Even Tzeentch, the god of chaos and kind of change, he's much like a galactic chess player. He can see, a fairly infinite number of moves in the future, but it all requires things to work precisely moving towards that future. The millions of kind of sub plans and choices that are made to get there.
Yeah.
So any one of them could change his vision or his desire for the future. Yeah. But the Eldar in question is still alive and is effectively the leader of the Ulthwé craft world. Eldrad Ulthorion is the...
That sounds familiar.
Yes.
Interesting.
So with the aid of the Alpha Legion agents, the Imperials are not only able to grasp the full magnitude of Perturbo's plan, but also begin turning the tide. And eventually, the Iron Legion are forced to withdraw with unbelievably heavy casualties on both sides. Both sides lose nearly 80% of their forces. So we're talking millions of troops. We're talking, tens of thousands of armored vehicles, perhaps even into the 100,000, plus all the kind of support equipment and logistical capacity. The Loyalist side still holds this up as a great victory, that they were able to, for want of a better word, beat off someone whose name they couldn't pronounce. We've all been
there.
Yeah. We've all been on those holidays. But that's another example of not only the kind of artifact hunt, you've got to be careful saying that, of the forces of chaos, but also the kind of, here we go, Ben, the dichotomy of the behavior of the Alpha Legion. So we're getting in now to the kind of closing stages of the Horus Heresy. We're on about, the 7th or 8th year of the actual heresy itself. So while all that is happening on Tallarn, that is being repeated on a load of other planets as they march inexorably towards Terra. There's this huge bid to stop Horus in his tracks at a battle that's referred to as the Titan Death. I'll give you the broad strokes. It's very similar to the Battle of Tallarn. It involves a lot more of
gourds.
A lot more gourds and some very, dare I say, sensual topiary.
Even some legumes.
Legumes. But Horus himself is at this battle, and he leads this enormous force down onto the planet. Now, the Beta-Garmon system, which is where this battle takes place, also known as the Battle of Beta-Garmon, that is a system that has 5 or 6 planets, 5 or 6 worlds, one of which is a huge fortress world. Another is a hive world. Another is a factory planet. But it's a huge staging area, and it's one of the kind of fortress systems of the Imperium. There are vast numbers of troops there. Like we're talking into the tens of billions of troops, loyalist troops staged in this area.
Definitely billions?
Go fuck yourself, yes. So
Excellent. Just checking.
Just checking. But as information about the Horus's invasion, it seems likely that they're going to strike. They have no choice, in fact, but to strike at Beta-Garmon. It's reinforced even further. There are a number of Space Marine legions, including, Ben, your beloved White Scars and the Blood Angels and others. Almost the total might of the Titan legions is placed on within that system as well. So you're talking about roughly 600-ish Titans, these massive walking siege engines, each of which could destroy a city quite easily by itself, given enough time. Again, a huge invasion force arrives on a par with the force that's defending it.
Wow.
It is it's effectively a single campaign, arguably a single battle that takes place across the planets of an entire solar system. This in the single, I think it's on Beta-Garmon 2 or 3, where Titan legions, the Loyalist and Traitor Titan legions, face off, like in their entirety. And that's why it's referred to as Titan Death, because you have 1,000 Titans, over 1,000 Titans fighting each other. Probably like cage matches. Maybe some of them have got luchador stuff painted on.
Thumb wars.
So the Anvil of Doom. Oh my God! He's brought out the Anvil of Doom.
Steel chairs the size of factories, that kind of idea. The destruction is so total of the Beta-Garmon system that the casualties in that system alone exceed the total casualties of the previous 5 years of the entire war, of the entire history. It is effectively the single largest battle ever fought within the kind of Warhammer IP, not excluding the masked barrel bashes of the old world. No? No? Please yourselves. It has some of the most glorious kind of scenes in it, like Sanguinius, who's the pronounceable Primarch of the Blood Angels. He descends, he's winged, like literally winged. He descends from a Stormbird, which is one of their kind of dropships, with an elite bodyguard of jetpacked equipped Blood Angels, and they actually land on a Titan and take it over, in this kind of Dirty Dozen style mission.
Cool.
And it's full of tons of little scenes like this.
You'd love that, Chris.
You say little scenes, like Blood Angels flying down on a fucking Titan. Doesn't sound like a little scene.
Well, compared to everything that's going on around it, you got to put it in context.
Compared to the 7,000 trillion people that have died right in the surroundings.
There's lots of action-packed scenes, lots of one-liners and things like that. It's proper.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Got it. Love it.
And I can tell that it's a smaller scale thing, Chris, because your nose is bleeding a lot less than it was a couple of minutes ago when it was described.
I just need to dab it clean this episode. I'm keeping up pretty well, actually. Yeah. My ears are popped, but yeah.
My ears are popped and I'm bleeding from my anus, but I'm in control. I'm in control.
But my nose is A-okay.
A-okay.
Well, that's off camera, so it doesn't count.
But again, in terms of casualties, as I've said, it exceeds the sum of the casualties previously. We're looking at billions of people dead with a B. And as it's referred to, or it's referred to as Titan Death, because the Titan legions are decimated, with almost literally 2 out of every 10, being functional, which is not the definition of decimate. I appreciate that, but it's a good word to illustrate the destruction. So much like the Battle of Tallarn, you're seeing the total eradication of forces. It's total war. One interesting side note here is Horus, who had previously had an encounter with Le Man Russ, he effectively collapsed and went into a coma, which necessitated the intervention of Chaos. In the kind of the duel with Russ, Russ had stabbed him with this kind of magical psychic spear. And what it had done is it had driven out the demonic possession, the kind of inception-y demon that was augmenting Horus's...
It exorcised him.
But it got rid of this kind of how would you describe it?
Corruption?
Or the corruption, yes. The corruption turned everything up to 11. But even with the corruption gone, it was still at 10. He still wanted to go to Terra. He still wanted to destroy the Emperor and take over the Imperium of Mad, which just illustrates that chaos corrupts what is already there.
Okay.
Oh, so when he did this, he got rid of that corruption, and that was a permanent getting rid of. Like it didn't re-corrupt him.
Until he collapsed at the Titan Death battle, after which there was a process that was carried out that reintroduced that corruption. But it highlighted that Horus, the kind of noble warrior, in quotes, was still there. The human was still there. He wasn't a demonic entity. This all culminates then, we're heading into the kind of closing section of the Horus Heresy. The Battle of Beta-Garmon really ends up setting up what's called the Solar War, where you see that the traitor forces, who had been kind of knocking on the door of of our own solar system for 5-6 years, trying to infiltrate in and take over planets one by one, that began in earnest then, because the forces of Horus were now at the solar system. They were, coming into the solar system, so they needed...
They were hanging by Pluto.
like a landing zone. Yeah, exactly right. So it's during the Chaos Forces...
It's a word. It's a word.
Their first objective is to control a landing area or a kind of warp area where they can come into the solar system. And they begin just effectively laying siege to an entire solar system. And one of the major events is on Pluto, where we happen to have the second true death of a Primarch within the Horus Heresy. So spoilers here, click away if you don't want to listen, but do buy me something. The Primarch of the Alpha Legion, Alfarius, is killed by Rogel Dorn, who's the Primarch of the Imperial Fists.
Holy shit.
This is the second Primarch to die, the first being Ferrus Manus, Isfan 5, where he was decapitated, as one of my very elegant Irish aunts would say. But as with everything, with the Alpha Legion, it's shrouded in mystery. Was he killed? I mean, he was killed, but was he killed?
Yes, he was.
As one of the fucking patrons tried to spoil on the Discord...
You mean dear, valued patron?
Yeah. No, it is difficult trying to keep elements of stories a secret to kind of surprise on the thing.
I've just stopped reading the Discord because I don't want any of this ruined.
They alluded to the fact that there were 19 Primarchs still alive at the outset of the Horus Heresy and not 18. Listeners recall there were 20 Primarchs, 2 were killed by the Emperor under sanction, or were they? No, they were. But were they? No, they were.
No.
Yeah. So that would leave us with 18 Primarchs. But we discover relatively early on in the Horus Heresy novels that one of the legions didn't have one Primarch, they had 2 because they were twins.
A Mr. and Mrs.
No, a Mr. and Mr.
That's fine too. That's absolutely modern. Yeah.
Don't let your porn searches infect this podcast. But it was Alfarius.
Okay, so there was a guy and a donkey who were twins. Right?
It was Tilia and Estilia, wasn't it?
Yeah. Ah! There was the biblically named Alpharius and Omegon.
Omegon.
Yeah.
Omicron.
Omicron. Yeah. Eventually, the kind of steamrollering of the solar system, it's almost inevitable at this stage. There's still the sheer volume of Space Marine legions and their kind of regular human forces coming to the solar system. They plow through all the outer planets. Obviously, the Emperor's children do that literally. And they arrive at Terra. Now, Horus arrives with the kind of en masse with 8 legions worth of Space Marines. Terra is defended only by 3 legions. The Imperial Fists, who have spent the entire Horus Heresy effectively fortifying the planet Earth, the Blood Angels, and the White Scars, who arrived directly from Beta-Garmon. They're able to get to Terra under, and I quote, mysterious circumstances. But there are no other loyalist legions. The Dark Angels are off purging heretic planets, effectively corrupted planets, including the homeworlds of traitor legions. The Ultramarines are trying to get to Terra as quickly as they can, but they're impeded by the ruin storm, which has faded somewhat. They are actually able to get out into the universe.
More of a ruined drizzle at this point.
Yeah, the ruined drizzle.
Does that warp storm manifest in the corporeal realm as well?
Yes,
it does. Well, how does it appear in the real world?
Like the kind of pink and white Princess Marshmallows. Please sponsor us. Effectively, space becomes tie-dyed. That's effectively how I would describe it.
Like oil on water.
Exactly right. That kind of weird sheen. Like the Charlie Sheen of space. There's an image.
Space Charlie Sheen.
Space Charlie Sheen. So the Salamanders, the Iron Hands, and the Raven Guard are all shadows of their former selves because of the drop site massacre on Isfahan 5. But they're out there trying to slow down and the traitors and disrupt as much of the logistics as possible. But now that we're in the kind of closing phases, they're just, as many of them that can are heading to Terra, but they're all going to be too late to get there. We're left with the entire populace of Terra being armed, which is in the tens of billions now because it's a planet-sized hive city. We have 3 parts of 3 legions, almost the entire Imperial Fist Sand Guard, but also elements of Blood Angels, elements of the White Scars, plus the Emperor himself, the Custodes, the actual armies. There's a couple of Titan legions there. It's the end game, so everything is in play.
And you said how many? So what's the strength of the traitor forces arriving on Terra?
You're looking at the traitors outnumbering loyalists by about somewhere between 2 and 5 to 1, depending on how you would.
Wow.
How you would. Plus,
right.
At this stage, the Emperor's children, the World Eaters, the Death Guard, and the Thousand Sons have all fully committed themselves to chaos, and indeed each 4 of those has committed themselves to an individual god. So the Emperor's children and their Primarch Fulgrim now worship Slanesh and are corrupted in that method. Fulgrim, the Primarch, has ascended to demonhood, to become a demon prince. So his lower half now is that of a snake. He has 4 arms, a wild pink afro, and horns. So he is a demonic prince.
Wild.
Like Angron now effectively looks like an even beefier bloodthirster. He's gone full kind of stereotypical demon prince. So he's, a deep red skin, horns. He's got his dreadlocks. He's got wings, the whole thing. So
It sounds like all these guys have just completely liberated. They're just like, they found their true selves.
Yeah,
Finally.
yeah, totally. They've come out. They've come out.
Yeah.
Mom, Dad, I'm a snake.
Yeah, I'm not touching it. The
It's all right, son. We knew it.
I
love you guys.
We knew it when you donned the pink afro and horns.
It's when you chopped off your own limbs.
One of the most interesting falls to chaos was that the Death Guard, because as they were traveling through the warp coming to Terra, they were becalmed within the warp itself. And we've discussed that previously, how sometimes ships can get stuck in the warp, and be released in the future. One of their number, a captain called Typhon, Callous Typhon, was possessed by, or infected rather is the better word, by the Destroyer Hive, which is a kind of plague-ridden wasp. But he then turned into, he was producing them. And thus it spread throughout the fleet. And all of these Space Marines who, if you'll recall, the Death Guard are really sturdy and pride themselves on endurance, all began to fade and die. And so the Mortarion, their Primarch, cried out for any aid to help save his troops, and Nurgle answered. And of course, Nurgle had orchestrated this event. And so they became what's referred to as the Plague Marines. So when they arrived, they had been becalmed effectively for decades and were thus fully warped into the kind of zombified superhuman soldiers that exist now.
Christ almighty.
So these 4 legions, when they arrived on Terra, they looked like they would 10,000 years in the future, fully corrupted, fully committed to chaos.
What was corrupting Horus? Was there a specific god that he was subscribing to?
Subscribe. Like and subscribe. No, he was what's referred to as a champion of chaos undivided. So for listeners who have endured, that's probably a good word to say, our fantasy podcast, you'll know what that is, where you worship the concept of chaos rather than any of the individual gods, but you do pay homage to the gods, but they're not your primary specialization. You don't go to Khorne to be a super effective bloodthirsty warrior. You don't go to Tzeentch to be like a mage of startling power. You try and encapsulate chaos in its kind of profound whole, if you can use that phrase.
Darren, sorry, quickly on that note, the Chaos Gods feel about that, considering, as I understand it, they hate each other. So someone who is chaos undivided, worshipping chaos as a whole, and worshipping, I guess, all the gods equally, does that come across as positive?
I think it comes across as a pool of souls that is halfway there.
Okay. So the Chaos Gods aren't going to hate you for loving all of them equally. At least they've got a bit of worship.
Yeah, you're still worshipping, you're still enacting Chaos's will. That doesn't mean that you won't later dedicate yourself to one of the gods, but just at the moment, you love everyone equally.
I'd be Chaos undivided with my indecisiveness, wouldn't I, Ben?
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah.
I could be Horus. What I'm saying is I could be Horus. Yeah.
I could be Horus.
Captain Foot in the back door.
All the time.
The back door foots. That's what your Marine chapter would be called.
Imagine having a foot in your back door. Ooh.
Yeah.
So a huge number of troops arrive on Terra. Instantly, the Emperor's children just kind of abandon the siege as a kind of formal structure and go off and experiment on as many humans as they can find and extract their vital essence and do other unmentionable things with them. The rest of the forces then are focused purely on getting through the various gates and walls of the Imperial Palace. Think of every tactic you could, and this is what happens all in one place. And slowly, very, very slowly, the traitors make gains, and they get to the final kind of gate of Terra. And it's a foregone conclusion that Chaos is going to win. They have brought the Imperium to its knees, and they have the Emperor trapped in his house. I mean, it's not like it's not to say there were not some glorious moments, and I'm thinking of one specifically for you, Ben, when Jagati Khan, who is the Primarch of the White Scars, rode through a gate standing on top of a Land Raider tank, holding it in reins made of chain, and just shooting and fighting his way through the Chaos forces to give the defenders enough time.
What an absolute
so extra.
Yeah, do you know the that bit in the Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers, where Gimli and Aragorn are standing on the bridge keeping the Uruk-hai back? Okay, it's that, but it's your chosen Primarch standing on a tank.
Jean-Claude Van Damming a tank.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Two tanks doing the splits.
Two Baneblades,
yeah. Did the chains work like stirrups? Could he pull on one and get the tank to turn?
Let's say they do, just to see what happens. Yeah.
It sounds like one of those scenes from your favourite Bollywood film, that does. Like,
What, Bahubali 2? The conclusion.
In fact, the whole of the Warhammer saga just is like a Bollywood film.
Oh my god, I would love to see a Games Workshop Bollywood film. That would be incredible.
I tell you what, we should pitch it, and if it succeeds, we should all rock up to the premiere on a tank.
Yeah, we should.
yeah.
Ultimately, we come to the climax of the Horus Heresy itself. As the siege is continuing, Horus realizes that the other loyalist legions are fast approaching Terra. So you're looking at the full might of the Ultramarines and the Dark Angels. You're looking at the survivors of the Drop Site Massacre and the various other smaller groups of the other legions heading straight for Terra. So Horus is about, in terms of elite super warriors, Horus is about to be vastly outnumbered. So what he does is he deactivates all the void shields on his flagship, the Vengeful Spirit, and effectively invites the Emperor to attack him.
Presents
himself. The
Emperor
does so. Yeah, he presents himself. So the Emperor, who's been sat on the golden throne this entire time, trying to keep the webway gate at the heart of Terra closed or reinforced, realizes that this is his opportunity to end the war. So Malkador the Sigillite replaces the Emperor on the throne. And
is he a Psyker as well?
Yes, Malkador the Sigillite is an extremely powerful human Psyker.
He's the vice president.
He's the administrator-in-chief of the Imperium of Man. So the Emperor teleports directly to the Vengeful Spirit, but he does so with Sanguinius and Rogel Dorn, who are the Primarchs of the Blood Angels and the Imperial Fists. They're accompanied by Terminator armored Space Marines, the kind of heavy infantry armor, and a large contingent of the Emperor's bodyguards, the Custodes or Custodes.
And the Groupies.
The Chaos Gods obviously see this and don't particularly care for it, if I'm being honest. So what they do is they, as best they can, scatter the troops throughout the ship, which means that the Primarchs and the Emperor himself...
they disrupt the teleporter?
Yes.
They disrupt the accuracy of it.
Yeah,
right.
so that no single troop materializes right next to each other, if you know what I mean.
Right,
so they're spread throughout the ship. This obviously leads to a protracted battle in which Sanguinius finds Horus first. He arrives at Horus's throne room and tries to reason with Horus and tries to get him to see sense and to stop, because throughout their entire lives, Sanguinius and Horus have been the closest of friends. They were the ones that viewed each other with the most respect and, dare I say, love. But it was not to be. Horus has now been augmented by all 4 of the Chaos Gods and kind of reinforced after the corruption was dissipated. It returned and then came back with gusto, and they fight a kind of a duel, not a kind of duel. They fight a duel, and one in which that Sanguinius is ultimately killed. And so we now see the next death of a Primarch. While he was killed, he was able to get a little stab in and gave a kind of nick to the kind of rune-covered armor of Horus. And as Horus is standing over the body of his brother, the claw, the lightning claw of Horus dripping with the blood of the kind of the angel of Baal, which is another term for Sanguinius, that's when the Emperor finds him. And the Emperor, I believe the young people say, loses his shit. And they just absolutely lay into each other. What you're seeing then is the single most powerful psyker to have ever existed, the Emperor, faces off against the chosen one of the Chaos Gods. So all 4 Chaos Gods are pouring elements of their power into Horus, fighting against an incensed Emperor. And eventually the Emperor manages to overcome him and blasts elements of the corruption out of him. And Horus comes to his senses and understands not only why he's doing what he was doing, but how it came to happen. And he realizes his mistake. Wow. This is from the original. This is from the very first mention of this duel over 25 years ago, where Horus comes to his senses but realizes that he can't survive. And the Emperor sets about destroying him, both physically and kind of psychically, spiritually, and the usual jokes we make about sensually,
financially,
exponentially.
Yeah.
But as this happens, Horus is able to strike out again and mortally wounds the Emperor, opens up wounds in his neck and across his chest, and the Emperor falls effectively unconscious next to Horus, who is just dead. Sensing this death, the Chaos Gods flee their puppets. They flee from all the Primarchs, who realize now that they are effectively on their own with them, with huge reinforcements coming to the planet. So they break off the assault almost instantly, return back to their own ships, and flee straight towards the Eye of Terror, but, with a lot of stops along the way.
Well, they had to get fuel, wouldn't they, and snacks.
Yeah.
Oh, mate, yeah, anything like me, I need pee stops every 90 minutes.
Ultimately, the loyalist forces are unable to pursue them to the extent that they would like to. The Emperor's is found by Rogel Dorn and is emergency teleported to Terra, where he replaces the burned out shell of Malcador the Sigilite, who has used every ounce of his spiritual being to keep the broken webway gate closed, for which the Golden Throne is in charge of.
So, sorry, quick question on that. You mentioned before that there was an everlasting, or very much, at the very least, an ongoing battle on the other side of that webway door, where the Chaos forces are trying to pour in, like they did when Magnus the Red, exposed himself to the Emperor. During the siege of Terra, then, did that battle on the other side of the webway increase? Did the Chaos forces think, right, well, we got to pour, this is it. We put everything on red, and they try and increase the pressure on that?
The short answer is it was all angles of attack. Yeah.
Right. Okay, cool.
There was a huge contingent of Custodes and other troops on the other side of that broken gateway, keeping the demonic forces at bay. But yes, the Emperor is interred into the Golden Throne, where he remains to this day. Well, where his remains remain to this day.
Nice.
And that's really the close of the Horus Heresy. as a battle. There are elements then that move forward that we will cover when we cover different factions, such as the Great Scourging, where the Imperium pursues the Chaos Legions, the implementation of Rabuti Guliman's Codex, Codex Astartes, which reduces the size of Space Marine legions, individual Space Marine legions, down to chapters, which is 1,000 Space Marines rather than the tens or hundreds of thousands of Space Marines.
Was that some sort of safety precaution?
That was a safety precaution, so this could never be repeated. You also see the establishment of the Inquisition. The Grey Knights were already a factor. They had been created but hidden as elite demon hunters, as elite demon fighters.
Cool.
Wow.
But yeah, so you see the kind of great hope of the Great Crusade, this expansion of humanity, stopped and destroyed. And then
Got so close.
Got so close. And the humanity effectively becomes a death cult. They worship a dying and dead god in the form of the Emperor of Man. So, thoughts?
Well, that was pretty fucking epic. And all this, does this really stem from the Emperor betraying the Chaos Gods all that millennia ago? Is that where this comes from, ultimately?
In a very real way, yes, but also no.
Okay.
No, that's the...
Yes with an if, no with a but. Yeah, okay, fine.
Yeah, again, the short answer is yes. It's the Chaos Gods were gunning for the anathema, as they referred to him, when he was able to get what he wanted without giving anything that the Chaos Gods wanted. So they were looking for a means to corrupt humanity and his kind of dream in particular. That's why they were able to truly corrupt the word bearers. And the word bearers really are the seed which forces everyone's hand, if we can keep using gardening analogies.
Would it have happened anyway? You know, if the Emperor hadn't made that agreement with him and then kind of reneged on it, do you think something like this might have still happened? Something kind of grand and on that scale?
I think it would have eventually happened. I think that the Imperium of Man was too big. It grew too big for what it for its administration, and would have fractured. I mean, that's what we see in 40K.
Yeah.
It's very much like a collection of systems rather than a single, well-administered empire.
It's funny because the 40K, like you mentioned earlier, it is very much an extension of 30K. I mean, chronologically, obviously, but you couldn't really kind of understand the lore or the story of 40K without covering the events that we've just covered, could you? It informs everything.
In terms of the Imperium and the notion of chaos, that's subjectively... Well, no, that's pretty true. I think you can exist within the lore of 40K without knowing anything about 30K.
Right, okay.
Other than the couple of pages or paragraphs where it's referred to in various codices and rule books. But the thing is that 40K existed before 30K in terms of the game and the lore. So it's very much retconning interesting stories and introducing new concepts within 30K while 40K already existed.
That's the part that blows my mind. I think that's the thing that has always interested me so much about the Horus Heresy, is that it was a story told to fit an existing setup. So like the constrictions in terms of storytelling, the boundaries that were already in place, you would look at those as potentially being a kind of barrier to creativity. But my God, like they did such a good job in explaining what's going on in 40K, and it really does. You hear the story and it sounds like it was created sequentially. 40K was created after 30K. The fact they did it in reverse is just mind blowing.
Yeah.
So, considering the end of the Horus Heresy, that the Horus himself was defeated by the Emperor survived, albeit he was maimed permanently, but it did change the setup and orchestration of the Imperium of Man ultimately, did Chaos actually succeed in what they wanted to do or not in that sense? Or not really?
They managed to disrupt the Great Crusade and the Imperium, but in one of the books, it's really, the Emperor sums it up, where he says, sometimes the best thing you can hope for is not victory, but to stop the other person winning. It's a stalemate. Yeah. It ended in a stalemate.
Yeah, okay.
And that's how it's existed for 10,000 years. It's a stalemate. Right. It's a constant battle for survival.
And the image that we see online of the Emperor as a skeleton on the throne, I'm assuming that when he was interred initially, he was still, in relative human form or relative whole form, and he's just basically rotted on that.
It's one of these things where that's how he's portrayed. That's not what he looks like now. No one really knows.
Right.
The Golden Throne now could just be a solid mass of machinery, and you could get nowhere near, like the giant test tube that contains his skeletal remains, which is an anchor for his spirit, which is fed by all these psychers every day.
Right. All right. Amazing. Shall I wrap up?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. All right, that's all from us. Thank you so much for listening. Details and imagery for the topics we've discussed in this podcast can be found on our website at layingdownthelore.com. We also have all our previous episodes on there, release schedules, merchandise, and you can sign up for the Laying Down the Lore newsletter, which includes exclusive info about upcoming releases, behind-the-scenes chat, and some extra lore not covered in the podcast. If you've enjoyed what you've heard in this episode and you want to support us, head over to patreon.com/layingdownthelore40k and sign up today for as little as £3. This will give you access to our Discord server so you can come and tell us exactly what you think of Crow. We'll be back again soon displaying just how little Chris and I know. Until then, cheerio.
Horus, Horus, Horus.
Toodaloo.